My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast.
Yay!
And it's season 7 of the Great Canadian Bake Off. It's a bake off. I don't care what you say. It's a bake off.
I'm so excited. I'm forgetting to speak.
You are forgetting to speak. Pulling the curtain back. We did a level check before this, and Kristie forgot to do one.
Yeah. There's this lovely long pause, and Chris like, you going to say something? I'm like,
I'm supposed
maybe?
to... Words are supposed to leave my
Sure.
mouth. So, it is the 7th season of the Great Canadian Baking Show / Bake Off. It's
as my mum would say, chuck a lucky 7.
Lucky 7, well, that was...
Yeah.
Lucky 7, that was... Anne was talking about Lucky 7s, obviously.
Yep.
Lucky 7s have different connotations for different people, whether it be an actual luck thing or people who smoked. Either or, at this point in time, but everyone can come together and agree that it is a fantastic thing. The Great Canadian Bake Off is back. It is wonderful to see it.
Yes, the Pavillion and all its springtime glory.
The Pavillion, again, for those who are new to the show, largely new bakers, it's a pavilion.
Yeah, not a tent.
Not a tent. None of this tent crap that we heard at the start.
No.
About, I'm so pleased. And look, the drinking game this week I included. Baker says, I can't believe I'm in the tent. And I put under it with a little asterisk, call it a tent all you want. It's a pavilion.
Yeah.
Okay, so... For the record, for brand new listeners who might be coming in and going, what the hell is this random crap? Mm-hmm. The Australian Bake Off is
the shed.
The British Bake Off is the tent. The Canadian Bake Off is the pavilion.
Sorry, that was the time when words forgot to come out of my face.
Words forgot to come out of your face. And if you pay attention to Kiwi...
It used to be the cabana.
And now we haven't really... The barn, I think, is where we're going with that. Because it's basically like a barn now. But you shouldn't really... mind Kiwi. Anyway.
Look, future Bake Off spin-offs, like franchises, I'm thinking like if you did say like Italian Bake Off, you could have the Bake Off
Piazza.
Well,
there was an Italian Bake Off.
Oh yeah.
But there should have been the Piazza. They could have done all of these sorts of things.
Colosseum, the Bake Off Colosseum.
The Bake Off Colosseum. Oh,
and
that's very Iron Chef.
Okay.
That's a bit too Iron Chef for my liking. Although again, you could have had if Japanese, the dojo.
Ooh, the Bake Off dojo.
Enter the dojo.
Fuck yeah.
So I'm here for this.
What's the Chinese, those awesome like multi-roofed houses.
Let's call it the pagoda.
The pagoda, yeah, like
pagoda would work.
That's what I want for that.
So so there's a lot of options here, but again for Canadians, yours is definitely a pavilion, right? Yeah. There is a tent-like quality to it, but you have a deck. You have a deck.
I know.
So it's therefore a pavilion. It's the sort of place where you would hold a World Expo.
I'm surprised they don't have a barbecue set up there, a little bar and stuff.
I'm staggered that they haven't, really, to be honest with you. And look, a new sponsor on board this year, Bailey's. So you could have a little deck. You can have a bar. You have a Bailey's bar.
Yes, I'm here for it. Set up some archery targets. I mean, we know Heather will be
all over that one.
But Robin Hood would be like, that's our area.
Robin Hood, Heather. There's an Heather, if you haven't spoken to Robin Hood about an advertising campaign where you shoot bags of flour and wink at the camera, you're not trying hard enough.
I know. Like, you have the little paper bags of flour on the target and they're all worth different points. Yeah.
Heather just fires the arrow, looks at the camera, winks, and it's like, Robin Hood, for all your baking.
And I'm sure I've seen a golf cart in there somewhere. I mean, it's perfect area for a golf cart, and you can shoot arrows with a golf cart.
I mean, look, it's a television centre there, so there would definitely be golf carts taking them around. Yeah. I can't wait to see Niv do a Robin Hood spot where she uses the bags of flour as curling rocks.
Oh my god,
that could be fantastic. Anyway, we'll get to all of that. We've got to get inside the pavilion.
I know. We're too busy just being excited about being back at the pavilion.
Before we do, I will very quickly go through the as I put out, the often imitated, never duplicated
Dallas Cowboys.
No,
bingo.
Not the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. The drinking game, which I know that certain individuals, I'm not going to name anybody, Great Canadian Baking Show official Instagram, have come up with their own version of bingo. Look, wonderful, fantastic.
That's great.
Lovely.
Double the booze. You can do Bailey shots and you can do shots of Robin Hood.
To be honest, shots of Robin, that's a dry shot.
Who else? Oh no, shots of Yorkshire tea.
Yeah, the Yorkshire teas is Bailey's. You missed the shots of Bailey's. Anyway.
No, I'm just more about the non-alcoholics. Fun. Yeah.
But in terms of their baking card's a bit more bland than ours. It's very much, it's like flour, sugar, Bird.
You say bland, yeah, theirs is like beautifully
There's
graphic.
15 million things on their card, though, where we narrow it down to the best 9.
Yeah.
So this week we had Saskatoon berries. They didn't appear. So Big Berry, not in there yet. Although
No.
they're coming. They're always coming. They're
Yeah.
always behind you.
Lurking.
The Baker hasn't heard of the
Pretending.
technical. Yep, we'll get there. Baker has a backstory video featuring a cute pet. Oh boy, if you were playing this drinking game, you were drinking a lot
Get
there.
out the Baileys.
Baker says, I can't believe I'm in the tent. Again, that was literally the first, 3 minutes of the show? Mm-hmm. Was everyone going, I can't believe I'm in the tent. I can't believe I'm in the happiest place on earth. I'm in the tent. I can't believe it. We smashed matcha, which is an ever-present square, but nobody used matcha because you've all got taste. And I'd like to thank the Canadian bakers for week 1 because you've all got taste. Yes. Please maintain that level of taste. Alan and Anne forage leftovers. They didn't in this episode.
I don't think there was time to actually show it. I reckon they did.
Well,
but I don't think there was time to show it.
Well, I've seen on the preview they showed of the series, Anne was definitely foraging. So at some point this series, that's going to hit.
It's the host's prerogative.
It is. You're supposed to. Dan Levy mastered it.
Oh, absolutely. Look,
Linda made him his own bake.
Yeah, his puppy dog eyes. I mean, how can you you can't deny a Levy anything in Canada.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we talked about at the
they
time...
have diplomatic immunity.
Well, one of the things at the time we talked about with that one was it was a little bit like when, Marge...
Diplomatic immunity.
It's a bit like when Marge makes the extra cake for Homer. No, Homer, this is the cake you can ruin.
Yeah.
It was very much Linda was baking for Dan Levy in that series of here's the bit you can ruin.
Yeah.
The Bruno pun, we didn't get Bruno puns this time.
Everyone else is throwing puns around.
No Bruno. Baker tells us they haven't practiced this bake to time. No, everyone apparently had. So good for you. Week 1, though, I'd expect that. And booze in a bake. I did that before I knew Bailey's was a sponsor. So we had some more. We had rum in there as well. There was a lot of booze in a bake.
Look, it's a promising setup for the season.
I can't wait to find out who's hiding the still under their bench. Anyway, let's get into the signature.
It's just under the deck now. It's a communal still.
A communal still. The signature was the pattern roll cake.
I love this.
A 2-hour challenge. I liked it because we all know if you've watched a lot of versions of Bake Off, whenever you have to do a roll, they crack, they fall apart. If your cream inside is not the right consistency, it just flows out of the damn thing.
Or if you pop it on too hot.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider here, but also I think there's a lot of scope for a little bit of personality to shine through. And we saw a lot of that.
We saw a lot of personality shine through.
I like it.
So let's start with Andrew.
This is a getting to know you bake.
It is. And the first challenge, and the first episode of the podcast is always just, the first challenge is always just we list who's there. So we start with Andrew. So Andrew is...
Hi, Andrew.
We're not going to do that for everyone.
Says you.
I do.
Not with that attitude.
So, Andrew is in the Ontario Public Service and also is in the vicinity of the Falls.
What's
So,
the Falls?
Niagara.
Oh, okay. I just noticed he did dodgeball. And I'm like, is he like, between bakes, just having people throw implements at him?
Wrenches.
Yeah.
Lots of wrenches.
Dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
So the Taste of the Falls, a roll cake that was inspired by the Falls. Vanilla honey sponge, peach compote, and a white wine buttercream. Very fancy. He also said that he's applied 6 times.
White wine buttercream. I mean, not that white wine. You can get it in a bag. You can get some fruit.
Goon. Anyway, so he's applied 6 times. Which we hear a lot of
tenacity.
In Canadian in particular, you hear a lot of when people get on there, they're like, I've applied for the last 4 seasons. And you talk to bakers from previous seasons and they go, oh yeah, I met such and such as their audition 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And it's really good that it's one of the things I really appreciate about the show is that they don't get disheartened in that application process. They're like, no, keep going.
But also, you look at like the quality of bakers in Canada, and it's fantastic. Like it's so high.
It's a very high
I guess there's
quality
not much you can do during their winters. Like we heard about Manitoba.
We'll get to Winnipeg. So yeah, we'll get there. So then we got Loic, so a high school teacher from British Columbia, and he was the one who made the treasure map roll cake.
I liked that, and I like that he was out sailing. I could believe him using treasure maps. Like that's just him on the lakes, out there looking for treasure. And did you know there is people who go looking for treasure in like places like that?
Doesn't surprise me.
I've been on YouTube.
You've been on YouTube. I've seen the YouTubes.
I've seen the YouTubes, and it's not just the people who are like, oh my God, what's in this random puddle that's in the middle of the street? Look, treasure. And they pull out plastic gems. It's like, no. These are actual people who like are in a certain area and they're like, shit, I found this coin from 1763. I wonder if I can find some other stuff.
I'm just impressed that your YouTube viewing goes beyond blue parrots. But
It's very varied. So I watch this awesome dude who does Maine lobster fishing.
Yep.
Very informative. I like his anger and rage at balloons. They get flown out to sea. I like it when he goes, here's an egger, we gotta throw it back. You learn a lot. Also, this dude who's got mantis shrimp. And did you know, they're fucking awesome mantis shrimp.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah, they're amazing.
They punch hard and they make a little click because they create some fucking surface tension bullshit. Anyway.
Well, I believe the mantis shrimp are things that interrupt the submarine's sonar. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that
believe it's
doesn't
mantis
surprise
shrimp. The Americans used to use mantis shrimp as a way to disguise where their nuclear subs were.
Just all these mantis shrimp lined up. They hate each other, by the way. They're very territorial. But they've come together to be a suicide squad.
Protecting the subs.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Kristie has a wide and varied YouTube following, including treasure maps apparently.
Yeah.
But so it was a Genoa sponge, peach curd, again the salted caramel. He also said that he added some, was it pepper later on?
I think so, yeah. Which is a great idea because that will just that little bit of heat get you out of the kitchen and into treasure map looking.
Speaking of those sorts of...
It's not very practical though.
No.
This is why pirates used to tattoo it on them.
Yeah, exactly.
If the pirate movie is anything to go by.
And it is. We know if the pirate movies are canon, and they are. Exactly. So, in terms of, speaking of those sorts of treasure maps and those sorts of adventure and traditional sorts of things, Heather.
Yeah.
So Heather went with the ancient scroll roll. But before we get into that, we need to talk about the fact that she was, again, the archery. We've already said it. If you're not looking for a Robin Hood sponsorship off the back of being an archer, I don't know what you're doing.
Heather is quite a number of my friends where the nerds have grown up, and the nerds have grown up and had children. It's fucking brilliant. So I've got a friend over in Western Australia who's a LARPer. Their kids go to Burning Swan and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, she does archery, she does épée, she does burlesque as well. It's fantastic. And I can just imagine Heather is one of those awesome...
I loved the big, the fact that they had her at the archery range.
D&D.
They had her at the archery range, and then you look, and it's the whole family at the archery range. Like, come on, everybody, bang!
She's also probably very aware that she's possibly raising children to live through an apocalypse. So.
Exactly. So, spice sponge, marzipan dragons on the side, and a rhubarb mascarpone. One dragon for each child, and the names were written in Elderfurtak, which is I looked it up, Northwestern Germanic.
Yeah.
One of the earliest, as they said, European languages.
Yes. Now, it's not 2,000 years old.
Or 3,000 is what she said.
3,000,
it is close to 2,000, though. It's first to 8th century.
Oh, okay. So it is old. And I'm sure it was... But that's probably where they've recorded it as well. So it's probably been used way before that. But also, the myth is that Odin was gifted it. And that's him hanging from the tree. And having an eye pecked out, I think.
But it's really cool to see... runes. We don't see enough runes.
And then women went, you know what? We'll let you write too.
We don't see enough runes on Bake Off.
No, I just don't think there's enough potential ancient alphabets, but also sigil magic that's done. And so she had that combined rune thing in the middle. Yeah. I believe that's a journey rune from memory. It's one of the ones that gives you safe journey.
So we'll have to. You can check that up. You and Heather can have a chat. Yeah. We cut to Andy. Now, Andy was adding 13 eggs. Now, I don't know if that was for the recipe or if he's in the pocket of Big Egg.
Column A, column B.
I like the idea, again, like The Simpsons. There's a giant egg running away. You better run, egg! Now...
An egg for every moon of the year.
He's from Montreal.
Okay.
So, I like the fact that everyone had a bit of an interesting backstory video. I love the fact they combined tennis and karaoke for him. It's a great combo.
But I do love... We obviously know who is the most beloved member of the family. I'm not sure if that was his children next to him, but it's kind of screw you kids, I'm singing with the dog.
It's me and the dog. So now, along your lines of something that you'd appreciate, a fallen Greek column.
Look, I think that's great. We need more ancient ruins in the tent.
So...
Pavillion.
Yeah, Pavillion. Pecan and
Pavillion.
banana. Don't you fall into bad habits.
Oh.
They can't get out of them. We need to stick.
Oh my god! So the Greek ones can have like a runic like a temple, just like
Acropolis. Acropolis? What the hell have I done?
Acropolis now.
Acropolis. Yeah. I've just done my own Stephen Fry. They say of the Acropolis where the Parthenon is. Anyway, more importantly, pecan and banana, vanilla milk cake with maple buttercream. And the reason he went with the banana flavour was that he loved banana-flavoured medication growing up.
We're all guilty of this.
Again, Ricodine. It's a beautiful raspberry flavour. I could have happily drunk the stuff. You find out later on, it's like, it's only available over the counter via prescription, and you really shouldn't have a lot of it. And I'm like, but it's delicious.
It's like, so growing up, Mum always had the vitamin C chewable tablets.
Yes.
They were so good. Like, they were bordered on fruit tingles. They were that good. Like,
exactly. So,
if you don't know what fruit tingles are, they're like a little lolly that's kind of sherbety and fruity and just awesome.
Delicious. Anyway, now we cut to Rania. Now, Rania is interesting because he was wearing gloves.
Yep.
And
Yalla, Rania.
I'm like...
Well, I know a little bit of Arabic.
I know. So I was really enjoying it. I'm like, oh, he's wearing gloves. I look at either he's cut himself and they're like, no, I don't like touching egg white. It creeps me out. Which is
our Habibi.
It's an interesting thing for a baker to have, an aversion to egg white. And it wasn't an allergy, it's an aversion.
Okay, so...
But that's what I said, it's an interesting thing.
It is an interesting thing. And speaking as one of the neurodivergent, because I can't do speaking as a mother.
Speaking as a neurodivergent. It's going to be a new segment on the podcast.
I understand this. You know me, I can't...
textural. No.
I can't have the heat from food on my lap.
No.
So I can't sit at with food on a plate on my lap. That heat does me wrong. Whenever I have to be the passenger helping someone pick up some takeaway, I have to hold it above me. It has to hover above me.
It hovers.
Because I can't stand the heat from it.
Yeah.
Other heat, not a problem.
No, but textural...
it's weird.
Texture's a thing.
We're just very sensitive to the world.
Yes, and he's with an evil eye...
In very specific ways.
An evil eye pattern.
Yeah, against the egg whites.
Yeah. Citrus vanilla sponge, mango lime jam, and the isomalt spikes with pistachio cream inside the thing.
I like how it's the evil eye and it's also threatening. Like it's supposed to break curses, but also possibly be a curse.
All things to all people.
Yeah. And he put halva in it. Yum.
Yeah, and that's the showstopper, but we'll get to that.
Oh.
Halva is a showstopper.
Oh, I thought it was in... I was just excited.
No, you were just excited for the halva.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Sydney. So now,
and the winner is Sydney.
So,
and no Canadians are getting that reference.
No, that's when Sydney won the 2000 Olympics. One Antonio Samaranch, the president of the IOC, did his announcement and went, and the winner is Sydney, Australia, and everyone jumped about 4 miles in the air.
Yes.
So Sydney now Sydney had a bit of a theme going in terms of characters.
Yeah.
So obviously we'll get to her character for the showstopper, but Poppy the Bunny, was the theme here, which was a childhood character for her. Pistachio poppy cake, candy poppy seeds, and a lemon ricotta cream. But she had character themes going all the way through. I hope this continues. I hope her bread is shaped after some form of, childhood toy. I hope all the way through there's a character, and by the end of the series, there's just this array of baked characters.
Yes, but she has to start renaming them because she starts encroaching on rights. And so this is a mouse.
Michael.
This is Michael Le Mouse.
So
Michel Le Mouse.
What I'm looking forward to by the end of this is we're going to have the Sydney Baked Universe.
Yes.
Rather than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's the Sydney Baked Universe. I look forward to all the rest of those characters, Sydney.
And it's more like Steven's universe, and it's just fun and sweetness and awesomeness.
We then got a brief interlude because we got some good Alan and Anne work. Now, Alan and Anne are usually really good in episode 1 because they take that step back to give everyone their time to breathe. But I really liked their signature challenge joke.
Yes, with Alan signing.
With Alan signing. You've completed your first signature challenge. 1 hour for the rest of you.
And I love Mermaid Barbie Anne.
Oh, the dress was superb.
Her whole styling. And I like how they dressed Alan to match Anne.
Yeah,
like
that's what you do.
But he's the... Okay, so Alan, the Barbie movie references are just coming to mind. But we'll move on. We'll move on.
move
I
on.
digress too much.
So, Kathy,
Yes.
you absolutely...
Fucking
Kristie,
legend.
by the end of this episode, all Kristie kept on saying to me was, fucking love Kathy.
Yeah.
So,
Legend.
quilting is her one of her major hobbies. From
Which
Alberta.
I have respect for. My
Yep.
sewing skills are getting
They're
better.
coming along.
Yeah.
Swirls and Whirls. Cinnamon Oat Crunch with a strawberry rhubarb jam and a marzipan pincushion. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you got to drink with her one because there were dogs all the way through her video. So drink! We'll come back to Kathy later on. So Candace is from Brampton, Ontario. Cherry blossom roll cake, coconut sponge, chocolate ganache, and cherry jam. Now,
Yeah.
Kyla said that she was very surprised by the combination of coconut, chocolate, and cherry, as it's not really what you'd expect.
Now, Kyla, darling, we're going to send you some
Cherry
cherry
ripes.
I think they have them in New Zealand as well.
There is a similar sort of candy in older candy in Canada, like a bonbon sort of thing.
Okay.
But for us, the cherry ripe.
Oh my god, like it's just the bomb.
So you did that.
Yeah.
Now the cherry ripe. So the cherry ripe is a cherry flavored coconut inside with
Yeah.
chocolate on the outside.
Dark chocolate.
So yeah, and you can, but it's normal chocolate, but you can actually get the proper dark chocolate ones too.
And look, I used to think that would lead to romance thanks to advertising
Yes.
in the 80s.
They used to advertise them as a very romantic bar.
I
It's
know.
it's just red coloured coconut.
And
but
the
still.
first thing, they never made them into like boxed chocolates.
No.
Like you didn't get the cherry ripe boxed chocolate that could be given as a romantic gift.
So the cherry ripe, so the cherry ripe is very much a thing, Kyla. You need to experience the cherry ripe.
I think we'll just
much
send it across.
much like later on, Kyla, we'll talk about another ingredient you need to experience. Anyway, moving forward,
Moving right
because we
along.
pre-roll. So
Yes.
everyone starts their pre-rolling, just trying to make sure that they get cracking on the roll cakes. We then cut to Camilla. She's from Toronto. I'm going to butcher this, but bocadillo con queso, which was a vanilla cake with guava jam and ricotta and marzipan guavas on top of it.
Yes.
Now they asked Camilla about her love of cake, and she's like, "I'm not a cake person. I don't like cake." And there's always somebody on Bake Off who goes on Bake Off and doesn't like cake.
Yeah,
They're
because
obviously
there's
their
more
area.
things you can bake
There
than
is,
cake.
but it's always really funny when you get Cake Week and they go, "So how do you like cakes?" I'm like, "I don't." It's very, again, it's Agnes Skinner. You know, I don't care for cake. Too sweet. Let's go to Niv. There's going to be a lot of Niv in this episode. I'm going to
Yep.
warn you straight up. Obviously, for the Showstopper Challenge, there's a lot of Niv.
Yeah.
But we got curling to start with.
Which is fucking
It
brilliant.
endears. Curling is endearing to us.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite like sports from somewhere else on the planet.
Because it's just not practical for us to do here in
No,
Australia.
God no. There's no like even. It's hot, yeah, but even in terms of like indoor ice rinks in Australia, the quality of ice.
Yeah.
And I do a hockey podcast as well, which some people listen to. Hey, Stephen, how you going? But we talk about the idea of the quality of ice in Australia.
Yeah.
And Australian ice rink quality
Yeah.
is terrible. They had the global series out here for LA Kings versus Arizona. They had to cancel practice the day before the series started because the ice hadn't set properly. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest rinks in Sydney,
Has a window in that when the sun comes through,
the ice starts melting.
even in winter, we just don't get
There's
cold
a
enough.
puddle. So yeah, like it's not the sort of ice that you couldn't do curling on it because the
No.
rock would go nowhere.
You just hope the big thing floats. Like you have to do water. It'd have to be the
Inflatables.
Yeah, that's why we do lawn bowls here in Australia.
That is why we do barefoot lawn bowls. Yes,
Yes.
it's very much a thing.
Yes.
So,
If you're bored, watch a movie called Cracker Jack. You'll come to
get it.
understand it.
it's genuine beer at 1978 prices. Anyway, vanilla cake with a rose petal jam.
They do some special baking in it.
Yes,
with
they
these
do special baking.
herbs.
Yes, vanilla cake, rose petal jam, pistachio whipped cream, and curling rock truffles on top. And I also like the fact that like for ice hockey, people talk about beer leagues and people play beer leagues. She's playing in a retirement curling league, and that sounds like so much more fun.
Yeah.
Because it's also the sort of league you can start in now, and you never have to go anywhere.
No, like it's no like, oh, I'm sorry, you're now over 35, you're off your trot.
As Alan put it, it's good on the knees. So now we get to the really tricky bit of the rolling. Everyone rolls. Some people's have theirs that work. Some people's unfortunately don't. Poor Candace, it cracked, it split, and she, the most enthusiastic and optimistic comment of, I'm working out where I can put stuff to hide stuff. And the answer, unfortunately, for Candace was literally nowhere. It was just falling apart.
It was the equivalent of one of those toddlers who close their eyes and go, "You can't see me," and
I also love that the Renier, where it was like, this was supposed to be blue, it turned green. Something sciencey happened.
Look, that's my excuse for a lot of life.
Something sciencey happened. So let's get into the judging. So Renier, striking visually, generous with the filling. The cake was very light. The pistachio in the cream was really good, very well presented. Niv, it was very clear what it was, even though Kyla was like, and the score. The score. And Niv's like, the score.
I identify with Kyla.
The shape is nice, good contrast between the jam and the cream. Mm-hmm. Andy's was huge. Like, it came out really big. The cake was too heavy in terms of like just the sheer volume of it, but the actual bake itself was quite soft.
Mm-hmm. Pillowy, I believe.
Yes, Sydney's was unique, unperfect, but well presented. But it did need a bit more cooking time. Andrew's was well presented, had a great shape. The sponge, though, unfortunately had a little bit of a gummy texture. Kyla did say, though, that the peaches were the real star, and the peaches worked incredibly well. Yes. With Candace, I liked the way that Bruno phrased it with Candace, where he said, "We see your skills, but we also see your struggle."
Yes.
And I thought that was
a beautiful way to put it.
It was a really nice way of framing it. Kyla was still not sold on the combo of flavours, to which I say, Kyla, you're wrong. You're just wrong, Kyla. Camilla, great colour. Avoid a crust where you can, because she had a bit of a crust on the outside, but the inside was really creamy. That was where Bruno hollowed it out.
Yes.
And she's like, I can't work out if that's an insult or not. Kathy, you can see the colour across the room. It was bright pink. Good shape, nice bounce on the bake. Like a great concept, but the filling was too hot when he went to roll. That's why it oozed out. Yeah. Very creative flavours. And Heather, a lot of work. It looked really nice. A very even roll, playful outside and inside, and it reminded Bruno of sour candies.
Yes.
And so he thought that was absolutely amazing.
I think it was also helpful that her scroll had actually invoked an old Norse warrior that is now going to lurk in the tent, kind of like Thor Odin's son from the US version of Ghosts.
That would be really cool. That would be really cool. There's a ghost week in there somewhere. Anyway.
Yeah, I reckon we can come up with some more...
Better themed weeks than British.
Yes, yeah.
Although I do like that the new British host actually seems quite cool. She's quite fun. And
I think we're going to have to watch British
We are.
again.
I actually have had a request from a few people in the UK who would like us to go back to covering British.
Okay.
So we'll think about that one.
Yeah.
We've got to find time, but yes.
Yeah.
All right, the technical.
Yes.
So the technical was a Boston cream pie.
Excellent.
There's cake in this pie. So that's a reference to it. Yeah, there was an ad for a Sara Lee dessert a couple of years ago. Yeah, there's cake in this pie. Sponge and a pastry cream. So 1 hour, 45 minutes.
And a chocolate icing.
At this point in time,
glaze.
Camilla started her theme for the technical.
Yes.
Which was all the different ways things could go wrong. Because she started with, I like that I don't know all the ways in which I could fail. Yes. That's nice.
Look, it's how the best inventions come about, isn't it? It's like this accidental fail. Oh, it won't cure hearts, but here's some thing that'll make your dick stiff. Like,
oh God. So Andy thought that this was just a larger version of a Boston cream donut because that's what he'd heard of. He's like, I've heard of a Boston cream donut. That's a bigger version of that.
Look, for a nation that I believe like donuts are probably their most eaten baked good, I think referencing and comparing to a donut is fair in this situation.
So what I really appreciated was that on the surface it looked like a really simple sort of challenge.
Yes.
But what I liked was Kyla spelt out in it why she set this as the technical.
Yeah. So
she said, it's basically testing 3 different sets of fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about the technical and the purpose of the technical. It's to see what you know about your fundamental baking.
Yeah.
So 3 layers of cake. Mm-hmm. So the cake needs to be good. The pastry cream. You need to be able to make a pastry cream that's not too runny, but not too thick, and it can't be grainy. So can you do that? Mm-hmm. And the chocolate glaze. Can you make a chocolate glaze that's not grainy, that's not too runny, that sits just where you need it to sit?
And
so
then
3
feathering.
key elements. Yeah, 3 key elements plus the feathering, which will... some people got very literal. Andrew, however, has made one, which is rare. You very, very rarely you get someone who goes, "I've made one of these."
I know. It's like...
So, now what they didn't include was the baking time,
No, that was a very interesting...
which they always leave something out, and I love the way that they must. I'm gonna put it in for 15 minutes, I'm like, and then they get to the voiceover and they go, "Now this should bake for 50 minutes."
I'd like an alternative version where they bring in Morgan Freeman. The cake did not need 15 minutes, of course.
Sadly,
So-
the baker didn't know this was way under time. Now that wasn't included in the time, in the instructions.
Yeah.
Now Andy had a bit of a controversial take in this episode too, because Alan said, "Now I hear that sometimes you can listen to the cake and the cake will tell you that it's done."
Yes.
And Andy's like, "Oh, I don't believe that." Val in Britain,
Noel in Australia.
Noel in Australia.
Someone was listening to their
Well,
bakes last season.
several Canadians have listened to their bakes over
Yeah.
time, including Jude.
Jude was a
You
listener.
know, the cake tells you when it's ready. It
Yes.
does. Now, does it do what Alan said? Yell at you, "Look at me, I'm ready." Not quite, but you can hear the way the cake is constructed. You can hear that is it set properly? Has it?
Yeah.
Then they cut to Camilla. I've made pastry cream before. So at least I know how it fails.
Yes.
She's very focused on failure.
She's taking the I don't want to have hubris to the nth degree.
Yeah, there's a level of, you don't say this is my week, but you really also can say things like, I might do okay.
Yeah.
Not like, I know how this is going to screw up.
But maybe the Colombian baking gods are a little bit more like
Unforgiving?
Unforgiving. She's like,
So, at this point, people started to go, "Oh, there's a lot of multitasking in here." I'm like, yeah welcome to Bake Off.
using 2 whisks at a time. Are you really baking?
Are you really baking? If you're not using 2 crepe pans at once. Sorry, Robert, I had to get that in. Anyway, Ranier sieving his pastry cream, which, interesting. It's going to change the texture. It's probably going to make it a bit runnier, because you are making it. It's got to be fine, and it's got to be, obviously well blended, but you run the risk of making it a bit too fine.
But there was no commentary on his pastry cream when at the end, was there?
And then
we'll find out.
A little bit, yeah. And then Niv spread it very thinly on the sheet to cool it, which is clever. That's thinking, because you've got to. There are things you do have to think outside of the pavilion on, which is, normally at home you'd make the pastry cream, you can put it in the fridge and chill it for as long as you need to chill it for.
Go do some Netflix and chilling.
Yeah, so we did
You can
that.
actually
Now-
watch some Netflix while your pastry cream is chilling. I believe that's what the expression...
That's what the expression means. That's completely what it means. Young people, we're with you.
They're really with the baking these
They
days.
really are. Young people are so all over the baking.
Yeah.
So like,
DTF. Down to food.
yeah, down to feather.
Down to feather.
So like, came up with the greatest baking maths I've ever heard. I've put it in for 15 plus 10 plus 5 plus 10 plus 5 minutes. And I've just put it in for another 10 and then another 5. Which ended up being over. But anyway. And then we cut to Niv, who just simply says, "Patience is not my virtue," which is, first of all, feels. But secondly, in Bake Off, a worrying trait possibly.
Yes.
When you just have to sit there. It's like, I'm just sitting here watching the oven and I thought it might be a lot more calming. Like, no.
Yeah, just take the rest while you can.
And then when she took it out, her cake out of the oven, she's like, "It's out, but it's not good." Whereas...
I believe a bit of Camilla's running through the tent.
Whereas, Loke turned around and it had one of my favourite comments in the whole episode, where he pulled the cake out and he goes, "I'm proud of you. I will visit Boston."
And that makes me think, is that how we entice Luke to come to Australia? Like, we've got to make him proud of our podcast. He can come for a visit, and we can go treasure hunting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now they cut
I'll take you up to my dad's place in Capity.
There'll be treasure all over the place.
Because he puts treasure out for my nephew. But also there's the myth of the Bushrangers gold.
Of course there is. Of course there's Bushrangers gold out there.
Yeah.
So now we cut the cake into 3.
Yes.
Now this is
I
where...
like you paused waiting for me to go into the tale of the Bushrangers gold.
I waited.
There's not much of a tale.
There's not much. There's Bushrangers gold out there.
Yeah.
Apparently Locke, however, decided that he needed to make the cake flat because he said, "I don't need to have a dome on it. It needs to be flat." And everyone else is going, "The dome is the most critical part of this to make it look like a Boston cream."
pie.
Cream pie, which was, funnily enough, one of the only things they had against his at the end was they were like, he was thinking it was second, and they're like, it was great, but it was flat.
Look, they tried it in the 90s to introduce some flat tops in Boston.
No.
And Marky Mark.
Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Feel it. Anyway, Kathy at this point covering nicely by going, nice firm pastry cream is highly overrated.
I mean, Marky Mark's brother Donnie,
yes,
did rock a flat top for a while.
Definitely did, yes.
Yeah.
As a member of New Kids. Andy's cake, unfortunately, was raw. Very raw in the middle.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman was narrating him.
This is where Andy's like, I don't think you can listen to your bakes. And Morgan Freeman was like, and Andy learned you should. Then everyone poured the chocolate on top. Some people put it down the side to completely cover it. Plus there was feathering. Now, most people worked out what feathering meant. Heather was incredibly literal.
Yes.
On the feathering. I'm like, people from New Zealand were just thinking it reminded them of home.
Yeah, further down the track we get some down under representation, but this is the first
down under representation.
The Silver Ferns, the netball team is just like, that's brilliant, that's our cake.
Got it.
Number one.
So the judging.
It's the Silver Fern, that's the Auckland cream cake. That's choice, bro.
So, Niv, they said it was a nice dome and a glaze, good texture, the cream was good, but a little bit thin.
Mm-hmm.
For Kathy, they said the dome was good, but limited pastry cream, which, yes. The cake, though, had a very nice flavour.
Yeah.
Like they said, clean, but really missing the dome, but his pastry cream was good.
Yeah.
Rainier, they said, clearly struggles. Didn't have the height and lift that they were after, and there were underbaked sections.
Ugh.
Heather, the feathering was too literal. Too much glaze, but a perfect pastry cream. Like Bruno's comment was, this is how pastry cream is supposed to be. Andy's was a bit sunken, and then they opened it up and they're like, yeah, it's raw. Sydney, good shape, tried to mask the sides. The cake also had a slight gummy texture. Candice had good glaze, and the feathering was really good. It was very even. Everything was nice. Camilla needed a few more minutes on her bake, and Andrew, they said the glaze was shiny, needed again more time in the oven and a bit more pastry cream. So, from bottom to top, it was Andy, Ranier, Andrew, Sydney, Camilla, Niv, Kathy, Heather, Locke, and Candice was first. Woo! So, literally from the first to the second challenge, tears to effing glory for Candice.
Yeah. It was a nice little, at least she's going in even keel.
Yep.
As long as she doesn't do too badly on the showstopper, she's good.
So, Ranier at this point decided that he would summon the Bake Off gods. Which is good. Always wise to not anger the Bake Off gods. No. Call on them and respect them.
Respectfully, yep.
And they will help you. Now, unfortunately, we get to the showstopper and they announce that Andy was ill and unable to take part in the third challenge.
Yeah. That was
which
sad.
is really horrible and, unfortunate for him. We're just starting to get to see how he's going to go. And at this point, you kind of felt like it's probably going to be the end for him. But, it depends on what happens in the bakes.
Maybe someone blows up the pavilion with their cake.
We have had it happen in the past where someone's missed a bake and they've decided, look, we don't need to necessarily send someone home.
Yeah.
So that was always an option, but obviously if you're unable to continue, you're unable to continue. And we've seen that before too.
Yeah.
It's happened in Australia as well. So the showstopper was a top forward cake.
Yes.
Now it must be able to stand on its side, which meant it needed to look good and be structural.
I know, this was a really intriguing showstopper. It's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Whack your cake on your side.
And
will it stay up? Will it still be tasty?
And as Koala talked about,
can you decorate it?
It was important to think of the structure. Mm-hmm. So things like the type of icing that you used and the type of cake that you made actually had to be thought about more because you needed it to stand properly.
Yes.
But forget all of that because this is where I think a lot of people who listen to this show will be expecting us to go, and boy, are we going, folks.
Yes.
So, Niv.
Yes.
So, first of all, there was a conversation about
Australia represent
eucalyptus. and koalas eat a lot of eucalyptus, and I think that sage is probably the closest I can get to eucalyptus.
Now, the funny thing is with koalas, right? Not even all eucalyptus
koalas
will eat. It's going to be very specific eucalyptus, like only certain types of trees. And also certain time of year. Like they've got to find trees that are growing new.
Yeah, they won't eat the older eucalyptus.
It's
got to be young, fresh sprout.
They're no sloths. They're still quite slow, but they're no sloths.
Also,
yeah.
constantly high. Because eucalyptus, for those who don't know, eucalyptus is quite potent.
Yep.
Like especially in the way that a koala, like, because for most of us you get eucalyptus oil or something like that.
Yeah.
But a koala is just mainlining eucalyptus.
Yeah. And
So
they don't drink water quite a lot. They get most of their hydration through the eucalyptus leaves, but they still drink water.
they look very placid, but it's mostly stoned.
Yeah.
They're actually quite aggressive.
Yeah.
They grunt, they snarl, they will chase you.
I'm just kind of glad. So in Australia, right, people talk about dinosaurs and all this kind of shit. Then you become a child in Australia and you start to learn about the megafauna, right? Yeah. And this isn't like, oh, it's a cute koala that's my size and we can be friends and run around. No, these are fucking like wombats that will like tear you to shreds. Like wombats the size of fucking Volkswagen bugs. Kangaroos the size of a like 2-story house. Friggin' echidnas that will throw javelins at you. No, I don't think there was that. But
no.
This is what I'm getting at. Is like, much like cats, these creatures came from like terrifying beginnings.
And we got a lot of the remnants of megafauna.
Yeah.
And we got all of it.
Yeah.
And
I'm just glad koalas found like that they'll just stay perpetually high.
Yeah.
Because otherwise
that intestine does a lot of work.
They would just
now
we wouldn't be scared of like kangaroos when we come across them. Like kangaroos, for the most part, you don't really see them except on the side of the road and then they fuck off. But if you come across like a big one, they might kick your guts out.
Roos can be really cool. Roos can also be very brutal.
Yeah.
Now all of this is sort of, inspired the idea of when Niv visited Australia.
Yes. We have background.
We'll talk to Niv more about that later in the series. We'll let Niv tell the story, but suffice to say, Niv spent a bit of time in Australia, and yes, as you saw on the episode, and has taken a lot of Australia. Now it's called Koalas in Paradise. Now, chocolate sage cake, fondant koalas.
Yes.
And the buttercream used yeast extract.
No.
CBC. I know that you are terrified of a sponsored product.
Yeah.
But you can say Vegemite.
Yeah, but Vegemite is owned by Kraft now, and Kraft is a big company. They should have just forked over the money, Kraft. Come on.
I'm sure, CBC have a deal through, Hockey Night in Canada. There's Kraft Hockeyville. Surely you could have got a Kraft deal to say the word Vegemite on Canadian television. Instead, it just sounds wrong to describe it as yeast extract.
Yeah,
it is a yeast extract. We all know it.
It sounds like something you got to go to the doctor
for. I've got to have my yeast extract checked. But look, Vegemite is, and Kyla said that it's a bit polarising. She was very non-committal, and Kyla,
I like her diplomacy.
I'd like you to be a bit more committal on that, though, Kyla.
No,
but
I like her diplomatic relations.
Vegemite,
she's very aware there is an Australian podcast.
They will rip her a new one.
No, we won't. We understand some people just don't get it because they weren't raised on it as a child.
But here's the thing, and we've talked about the way that people experience this before.
Yeah.
If you eat Vegemite like Americans try to, you'll hate it.
Yeah, this is not Nutella, people.
Americans, whenever you see Americans on TV eating Vegemite, they get a spoon.
Yes.
And that's the first mistake you've ever made.
But I believe it was Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman on The Tonight Show did it and demonstrated what you do.
You scrape it on.
You put your toast, you scrape butter on first.
Yep.
Then you get a thin scraping of Vegemite, and you just lightly coat it.
Yeah.
Right? It gives it a nice tang. It gives it an umami flavour. You can use Vegemite quite successfully in a lot of Asian cooking.
Yep.
It often replaces things like fish sauce. It gives a really nice umami style flavour.
Yeah.
So it's actually used a lot in cooking for people as a substitute for those sorts of flavours.
And I think it can be used as a vegan substitute for some stuff because it doesn't have animal products.
Yeah.
I mean, yeast are technically animals.
But we're not going through all of that.
But I've already done that rant.
Exactly. But in terms of this one here, first of all,
you're destroying a whole civilization. This is not just one little yeasty.
Wait until we get to Bread Week.
Okay.
Leave your yeast rant for Bread Week. But so we got a lot of people going, so yeasted extract. huh? It's like and what I was also a bit concerned about was Koala was like, it's very much sort of a polarising thing. Now, of course, Koala spends a lot of time in the UK.
She does.
So she might have been thinking Marmite.
Yeah,
now, Marmite and Vegemite, everyone lumps them in the exact... They are not the same thing.
No.
They have a different flavour.
Yeah, Marmite I find to be more kind of caramelly, if that makes sense. Like
it's far more caramelly.
Yeah.
Whereas, Vegemite is a lot more salty.
Yes.
It's, they're two sides of a salted caramel. But, look, Vegemite, it was good to see Vegemite.
They're superior.
Good to see Vegemite represented in Bake Off. And not in Australia.
No.
I'm trying to remember, we actually haven't seen Vegemite in Australian Bake Off.
Haven't we?
I don't think we have.
They need a whole Vegemite week then.
They've got to get a craft sponsorship for that first. And, it's very hard to shoulder some of the sponsors out of the way. So... we cut over to Sydney. Well, ironically enough, after talking about Australia.
Yes.
So Sydney talked about an espresso, rum, and coffee. And then she goes, I just said coffee and espresso. They're the same thing. I clearly haven't had enough today. To which I say, Sydney, I salute you.
I love Sydney and I love her energy. And I was looking at her going, who does she remind me of? And she reminds me of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter in Stranger
Maya.
Things.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Stranger Things.
A little bit, yeah.
So now that there's a ghost in there, we have a potential Stranger Things cast member.
And we can have kids on bikes.
Yes.
So...
it's Alan and Anne.
So this was called Dream Come True. It was symbolising her journey to the Pavillion. But chocolate, passion fruit, and most importantly on the outside, a representation of Sydney's second character, her emotional support croissant called Bruno.
I just now think that this has to be the official children's mascot of Canadian Bake Off.
Bruno the croissant.
Bruno the croissant.
It's appropriate.
Yeah. And then there can be a kids' TV show with Bruno and his croissant friend.
I did notice, by the way, Bruno talked about the idea of now I've got to be nice to you later on. But I also noticed that when they cut through Sydney's at the end,
yes,
he didn't cut Bruno.
No.
He cut around Bruno.
Like a koala got its ear chopped off. And these things are endangered. Like,
koalas are endangered, folks.
Like Niv's there going, oh no, it's on a slight angle. And I'm like, if it squashes the koalas, I mean, it's beautifully representing how
endangered species they are. They cut right through the middle of a koala.
We live
Bruno the croissant? No, missed it.
We live near one of the few colonies of koalas in Australia that don't have chlamydia.
Exactly.
Another one lives up near my dad.
Yep.
But that one's very top secret.
Yes.
Hush, hush.
So...
Not ours. Our state government tries to kill them.
Anyway,
they used to.
Moving on. So Heather. Now Heather goes, I like a punch-in-your-face lemon cake. And then thinks about it and goes, I don't quite know what the judges like.
I'd like a rhetoric where, when they're doing the critique and Kylie goes, that was a bit of a punch in the face. I'm more prone to, I like a lemon flavour. It's more like a slap on the butt.
I like a kick in the shin.
A kick in the shin.
Now, she said, I like a punch-in-your-face lemon cake.
Pinch on the arm.
So a punch-in-your-face lemon cake, is that talking about the idea of the cake hits you in the face? Is it the lemon that's punching you? Do you punch the cake? Has the cake got a face? I'd like to know the logistics of this.
The cake does a bit of a Kool-Aid man.
So, honey, lemon, and poppy seed cake with a Swiss buttercream. And Heather decided that it was going to be shaped like and representing Manitoba. Now, they did say that it was definitely a summer scene because, Manitoba in the winter... It's a whiteout, and again, as a hockey fan, and the Winnipeg Jets do a whiteout thing where everyone in the stands wears white, and that's a thing. It's also one of the reasons why no one will go and play for the Winnipeg Jets because they don't want to go to Manitoba because in the middle of winter, it's just ice and snow and cold and dark.
Yeah, and all you hear is it Ozzy Osbourne? Who sang you? Dun 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 dun, the ice and snow and the sun.
Zeppelin.
Zeppelin. It was Led Zeppelin. Yeah, there we go.
So immigrant song. Yes. Kathy.
Yes.
So Kathy then gets to do something that unfortunately our poor Niv had to use yeast spread the whole way through. Kathy, on the other hand, could put the bottle of Bailey's in the middle of the bench.
I know.
They still refer to it as an Irish cream ganache, but they could say the word Bailey's, including in the judging where several times Bruno said, I can't quite taste the Bailey's. So 80 mils for the cake, 80 mils for me. It's the way you should bake. Like in the last series of Australian, for example, Adam. Every time Adam baked with booze, a shot for him. So there was a choose a hue cake. Now, obviously, which hue are you picking?
I know. So there's a great game called Hues and Cues. Is that,
Yeah, Hues and Cues,
Hues
yes.
and Cues, and it is a mindfuck, but amazing. And I was looking at her cake, going, Now,
How would you describe it?
How would I describe it? And I'm going, maybe the orange, like a mandarin.
So hues and cues.
Clementine.
You get a card with 4 colours on it.
Oh, yeah,
and
you're
you
explaining
have
the
to describe in 1 word and then in 2 words. There's a whole board with all like the spectrum.
Yeah.
And you have to describe. You can't use the colour, obviously, but you have to come up with 1 word and then 2 words to describe what colour you're looking at. And people have to put their token closest to the colour.
Yeah, like this is, what was it? There's like about 150 or something squares of like different shades on the board, and they're all just slight increments into different.
It's really tricky. Really tricky because you can't use colours at all.
Yeah. Pro tip: don't look at the card for how you
Look at the board.
Look at the board. Yeah.
Also, my favourite hue, probably Jackman. Bonneville's good.
Yeah.
Probably Jackman.
Yeah. Look, you know. You
And
can,
actually, Hugh Grant is kind of a really cool dude.
he really is. You know, like he's overcome so much.
And spends a lot of time now just basically laying into the Tories in England. So, good for him. Dark chocolate cake, Irish cream ganache, Baileys, and a mint buttercream. And representing with the colour wheel. Now, that mint buttercream, while I like the general concept of it, as Bruno said later on in the judging, the mint buttercream overpowered Baileys.
Yeah.
What you should have done was make a hot chocolate with it, apparently. Can I just say, it's great to get the commercials, because you get the commercial, our 2 favourite commercials.
Yeah.
First of all, the Baileys one where it's like, a hot chocolate. No, it's not a hot chocolate. It's a Baileys with a hint of chocolate around it. Mm-hmm. But secondly, good to see the Canadian farmers add back, isn't it?
Oh, the dairy farmers.
Dairy
They're my
farmers of
favourite.
Canada.
Oh, bloody love it. And I'd really like to see more cheese. Like, just more
Where's
cheese,
the cheese?
In the pavilion. Where's the cheese? I like a bit of cheese.
Okay, so Camille.
Yes.
Hazelnut and chocolate cake with a hazelnut praline. Now, she also made double the batch of praline because she wanted it really crispy, which I loved. And it was all in honour of her and her husband's exchange travels and the fact they met over in Germany and they travelled around and they got married in Canada. It's a really cool concept there of her cake. Cacciarania, who's making speculas, although wasn't quite sure where they were from.
Look, he knew the general vicinity was like Germany. I mean, it was.
I like the fact as well that Heather was the font of knowledge.
She's like, it's Dutch, dude.
It's Dutch. It's definitely Dutch. I love speculas. They're amazing.
Deliciousness.
Now, this is where you really like this flavour profile, though, because you've got speculas with halva.
Oh, what a beautiful idea.
It was also a Kashmiri chai cake, which they didn't really talk about at all. They focused on speculas and the halva, but they didn't focus on the Kashmiri chai.
I really like this whole blend. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and unfortunately for us, the only thing that I was like, about was rice paper on top. And the reason for that is not so much your fault, Rania. It's more the fact that we've just finished a season of Australian where there were bloody paper sales everywhere. Like, everyone just went,
obviously.
How am I going to do decorations? I know, we'll do paper decoration.
Yeah, obviously they had a bulk sale on.
Well, they clearly did. At this point, Locke experienced everyone's worst nightmare. He dropped his cake.
Yeah, that was...
Thankfully, had enough batter to recover.
Yeah.
Now, he made a lemon sage cake. Sage got a lot of work out in this episode. Cherry jam and tempered chocolate.
I'm sorry, I think you'll find it's the closest to you.
you could find. Tempered chocolate tree bark and buttercream painting of cherry orchards.
Yes.
And then because he dropped that cake, he then painted the other scene on acetate so that when the other cake hopefully cooled, he could just push.
And it worked.
It did work. It worked really well.
Well done.
Now, Niv at this point in time was making fondant koalas. They came out really good too. Candace was making bees because she was making a honey almond cake with an amaretto soak and cereal milk frosting.
Ooh.
Now, this is where Anne was talking to her and she's like, it's my son's favourite cereal. And Anne's like, but you're adding booze to it? And Candace is like, it's also for mummy.
It's a family cake.
Now,
something for everyone.
Andrew decided that he was going to do something really cool. Mm-hmm. So, Andrew broke out the ice malt.
I know. I love this. I love this technique where, you pour the ice malt over ice, let the ice melt a bit, then you can pull it out and get a nice little coral effect.
It was wonderful. And then it was great because coconut cake, mango, coconut, and macadamia buttercream. Mm-hmm. And it gave Andrew and Anne something to bond over. The tedious boring life of a pet fish owner.
See, you say this, but you really haven't watched the right YouTube videos. Like, there's this other guy who goes out into Florida. Like, he's the equivalent. He's Florida boy. He's not quite a Florida man yet. But he and his girlfriend go out and he, like, rescues pet fish from, like, crazy... Like, I don't know what the fuck people in Florida do, because this is insane.
You don't want to know.
He'll go into abandoned houses and there'll be, like, a pool in the backyard that's just filled with, like, crazy fish. And he'll, like, go and rescue them and then rehome them and all this shit. And then he goes out into, like, not sewage, but like stormwater drains and finds, and he's actually doing a service. So he leaves the natives, but catches the invasive pests. And I just don't think you've been looking at the right fish.
Although again, look, we had fish all the way through growing up, and as I've
they're
mentioned,
boring as fuck as pets.
I've mentioned before, like, and Anne was talking about the fact they die really rapidly.
They do.
They die even faster, Anne, when you've got a snowflake eel in the tank.
Really?
Yeah, because most of the time they get along really well, but occasionally the snowflake eel will decide to do something like chop the side off an angelfish.
Like, hey, hungry.
Yeah.
Snack.
Kathy was then hoping that the more stiff ganache that she'd made would actually end up being like mortar, which is a good concept. I liked it. So everyone starts construction. So Candace was having a few issues with hers staying up. Rania was having issues and actually had to put it on the side, couldn't stand it up long ways like it was supposed to.
Yeah.
Niv was worried that the back needed more love, and aren't we always worried that the back needs more love?
Yes.
But then yelled out, "Koala party!" And I'm here for the koala. I mean, a koala party, there ain't no party like a koala party, because a koala party is...
Just noisy grunts.
Noisy, well, yeah, when you get to koala breeding season, if you live anywhere near koalas in breeding season...
Oh my God.
My word, it is just noise.
For animals that just eat eucalyptus, which is, one of the primary things in, like, a lot of nasal clearing medication.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, they sound like they got really bad sinus.
For anyone who's a fan of early 90s WWF wrestling, think the Ultimate Warriors promos. Lots of snarling and grunting. Now, as Kathy points out, then when she goes to pick hers up, and of course this cake weighs 50 pounds. So let's get to the judging. Heather, Manitoba as a shape looked fantastic as a theme as well. Beautiful even layers, rich flavour, and the poppy seed balanced beautifully.
Gorgeous.
Kathy had a striking presentation. Like, colour was bright. Both of Kathy's signature and her showstopper. The brightness on both of them, for different reasons, was really incredible.
Beautiful use of colour.
The colours inside were unexpected as well. Good flavour, but a bit dry at points. And they said the Baileys unfortunately got lost with the mint.
Yeah.
Like they said, the seasons looked amazing. The cake was tart, but in a very good way. But unfortunately, he had missed a leavening agent. So the texture was a bit tough, and you could see it wasn't quite...
Oh, bugger.
Yeah. Candace, concept was clear. They would have liked a bit more decoration on the hive, although we know from watching it that she was more worried about falling over. It was still on an angle. The texture was nice. The almond was good, but Bruno was a bit disappointed that there wasn't enough honey in what was ostensibly a honeycomb.
Yeah.
Rania, they said it looked great. It wasn't tall or thin like they expected, but the flavour profile of the specular of the halva was incredible. And they were like, it's just a genius concept. Sydney, Bruno got to meet Bruno. Clean work, but still whimsical. And it's good to hear the word whimsical.
Yeah, a little bit of Jude.
The cake had a really good texture. The passion fruit, however, needed a little bit more processing. They said a bit of sugar in with that just to refine it a bit more. Camilla had a really creative design. Very clean, evenly baked, and the crunch from that extra praline that she made was absolutely beautiful.
Nice.
Andrew's fishbowl was a great idea. The coral was gorgeous. The buttercream and the macadamia was really fun, but the cake was a little bit gummy again. Niv. The koalas were perfect. It showed very good piping, well-constructed cakes, clean, the sage worked. The yeast spread and raspberry works well. Bruno was very sceptical about the profile, but he actually really liked the flavours.
Yeah, because you've sweetened a little bit of an umami flavour, so it comes out like a caramel. Like
so what you've got is the tartness of the raspberry and a salty umami Vegemite together. You know, if it's not going to be overpowering. It's going to balance quite well. And Vegemite and chocolate goes really well as well.
Yeah.
So the star baker was Heather. And unfortunately, because of what happened in the episode, unfortunately, Andy was unable to continue.
Yeah.
So I'm disappointed that we didn't get to see more of Andy, obviously. And it's really, again, especially in episode 1, that's a really hard...
Yeah.
It's hard to go through. And, but as they all said as well, he's very much part of the family. He should feel part of the Bake Off family, and he is.
And I hope he's doing well and he's not,
Yeah, and again, hopefully we'll get to have a bit of a chat with him maybe in the not-too-distant future. We'll see what happens with that. But... that's your episode for this week. It's obviously a long one because, it's episode 1. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again. We're so pleased to be back. We absolutely love doing this. We love our Canadian friends.
We do. And, for us, it's the perfect time of year. You're enjoying spring. We're literally enjoying spring. I know they're in Canada, they're actually going into their autumnal season, but...
you get to watch what was a warm season in the shed, in the pavilion. We are getting to have ridiculous heat waves.
Yes.
So, until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we will catch you all later.
Okay, koalas, it's time to crack out the champers. Time to party!